You can listen to. I am desperately trying to finish a piece of writing for this month for my Patreon. I wrote about another 1,000 words for it the other day, which for me right now is good, and I'm going to explain why that's good. And this is a serious moment. It's still not a finished piece of writing. And this has been like really weirdly difficult for me lately for a while. And this is a thing, I don't know, I thought about whether I was going to mention this or not on stream or on social media at some point. And I've hinted at it before, but it feels strange to have this going on and not talk about it, considering I talk about other stuff in my life. Because it was going to get revealed sooner or later, especially in this thing that I am writing right now. And it's a thing that I should probably not feel ashamed of or not feel weird about. It's a thing that I've definitely written a little about before as well. I am, at the moment, being moderately, heavily medicated for anxiety. This has never happened to me before in my life. If you've read like some of the stuff that I've written in the past or seen some things that I've put on social media, I was diagnosed with some anxiety in 2019 by a therapist. I'm going to produce I don't know if you can see this, a substance here that is in front of my computer, because this is how I will, oh my God, does that have my address on? No, it's got the address, it's fine, it's got the address of my farm, you can't see it. This isn't working, it's not working. Anyway, look, it's a real thing that really exists. It's called escitalopram. And it's one of these things that you can have for anxiety and panic if your anxiety and panic become bad enough that they interfere with your life and they prevent you from doing things like, for example, your job and day-to-day tasks and remembering to do everything that you need to do and paying your bills and stuff, which is a problematic level of anxiety and panic. Especially as I'm a person who, like, at the moment I still live alone. I like being independent. I've always been a person who enjoys being independent. I've lived with other people sometimes in my life. I've lived with partners. I don't yet live with my partner. That may happen in the future. It's a bit of a chaotic time right now in a pandemic to make some future plans about stuff, but it may be, I don't know. But living alone also comes with some disadvantages, such as you're the only person in charge of everything and you spin all of the plates all of the time. I don't want to go into all of the stuff behind anxiety or like all of the causes for it or reasons for it or things like this. I've talked a bit before about doing, like I think everybody could do therapy, because I think it helps everyone, because it's just I think it's a mental health thing, the way that like everybody could do some form of other activity or, you know, physical activities that could be good for you, whether it's walking or I don't know, just walking. There's such a thing about people. It's been weird, but walking has been such a good thing for so many people's mental health in the pandemic. I'm sorry if you hear someone revving an engine. That's just I'm on a bike right now. I'm also revving an engine. I'm just doing that to focus. It's affected my work a lot, and it's affected me also remembering to do things like pay my bills and juggle a pandemic and keep up with the tasks that I need to do. One of the great things about being on this medication is it makes me a lot calmer and a lot more reasonable, but it also, in a time where I'm also on other medication for digestive gut issues, it makes those issues worse. The reason I'm on escitalopram is because there is a different drug that I could or would take if I wasn't also on another drug called pantoprazole, which reduces the amount of acid inside of me so that my insides don't eat themselves. So it's a thing. I'm pretty happy right now. I have a good life. I feel happy to be in Vancouver. I get incredible support from my friends who are terrific. My partner is great. I like my job. I like being here. I like my neighborhood. I like where I live. I'd like the rent to be lower, like we all probably would in life. But I find it hard to work and do a lot of things. And I don't know. I may talk about more of this and more of some of the things behind it, or I might not. We'll see what happens in life and how some things go. As some or all of you may know, I've had some struggles with immigration in the past, and that probably contributed to some things and some uncertainty for a long time there. I've also worked very hard at some things, and that's been somewhat stressful, and I've had some personal life changes and uncertainties, and I think any one of these things is a challenge, but a few of them, like over a period of time, is a lot. And boy, this is happening. I'm going to talk a bit more about some of it in this thing that I write, hopefully when I write and finish it and put it on my Patreon, and it'll be there for the world to see. You won't have to pay to read it. You could pay to support me if you wanted to. You don't have to. But there are so many things in my life that I've talked about and I've tried to be open about and transparent about, and I haven't gone into this yet, and I've been a bit worried about that. A friend of mine who I haven't seen that much in person, but I talk to on the internet, is a chap called Johnny Chiodini, who has also covered games and talked about mental health, and I talked to him about a bunch of these things a while ago, and that was a bit helpful. I would recommend watching some of his stuff and checking him out. He now also has a Patreon as well, which I think is doing very well because he's very popular and does some good stuff. I would say check him out. He talks about this stuff better than I do, and he's been handling some of it for a bit longer, and I think in different ways. But I believe, you know, we've compared notes and talked about, like, what's it like to be on a high dosage of a thing. I have not yet had to cancel a stream for anything that I've booked, but it might also happen in the future, because sometimes the world doesn't see it, but sometimes, my goodness, I'm not well. And I don't mean mental health, I just mean my body just, escitalopram does a thing and my stomach's like, no, we're not doing something today, we're just going to be ill for 2 days in a row, sorry. There we go, that's happening with me. Thanks for listening to that. I don't know if I'm going to try and clip this and put this on social media. Like, maybe I should have prepared this and written something. I don't know. But this is it. This is a thing. It's people who talk publicly about mental health that encourage others to maybe seek help. It's really important. I hope so. You know, I can mention that briefly. Thank you, FK. Here's what I did as well as part of this. I first talked to a therapist about these things in particular, because I've talked to therapists a bunch of times in my life about a few different things, and it's always been a good idea to do that, and it's been a good, helpful thing to do, because, you know, if nothing else, it's a professional sounding board, and I think it's good to talk to your friends about these things, and it's good to seek advice from people who know you, but also somebody who doesn't know you and who is professionally trained and who can be more objective and more distant. Like, your friends are great. Like, my friends are like the most important things in my life. They're wonderful and excellent, but obviously they're going to be on my side and they're going to be a bit biased toward me, whereas a therapist is sometimes going to ask me awkward questions or explore stuff that I never thought of, and it's really helpful. But I first talked to a therapist specifically about these things in 2019. At the very start of 2019, which was about the time that I started an immigration appeal where I was just like going to go up against the Canadian federal government, because why not? And that wasn't terrifying at all. But that helped a lot. That helped me talk about some of these things a bit more and find practical ways to think about anxiety and think about when you face big challenges and when you face something that's bigger than you, which is something we might all have to do at some point in our life. Because ultimately I had to face something bigger than me that was wrong. I had a lawyer and I had incredible, wonderful support from people on the internet who sent me a bunch of money. But at the end of the day, you know, and I still have this. I still have on my fridge my email saying, like, we've confirmed your permanent residence. You are legally allowed to live here. I still just have the printout of that just on my fridge. Thanks for the bits, no pun included. But I also still have, like, the email from my lawyer saying the Canadian government admits they are wrong. They made a mistake. And as I'm Paul Dean, and that's the Canadian federal government, and like sometimes the bigger thing is wrong. I don't know a better way to put that. Anyway, it was very good to talk to this professional person about that. And that got me thinking a lot more about anxiety and ways to deal with that. And then when I came here and I had health issues here that were partly stress based, like my specialist was talking about my duodenal ulcer, and he said, yep, it's caused in part by this bug that you've had inside you, but it's absolutely also caused by stress. When I said, like, here are some things happening in my life, talk to a therapist about some of these things. I had this immigration thing, there's a pandemic right now, and he was like, no, this is like stress and you should talk to my GP. So I talked to my GP and he was like, no, you should be on some medication for these things because it will help. And my GP, who is English, funnily enough, and excellent, was immediately like, yeah, we should put you on this thing and we should put it on you right away. And I've also been doing a mood tracker on the internet, and you can see the moment, like a lot of the things like my functioning are not great and some of my moods are not great, but the moment I got put on this medication, like you can see the graphs go up, particularly generally the actual graph that is how happy I am just goes boop. And it makes a difference. And so, yeah, I don't know, it's probably worth me actually talking about the practical. I think this counts as a tall pull there. It really does. I think this counts as a practical thing to talk about, not just what's happening with me, but how I dealt with it. So yeah, my GP helped me with some drugs and some like things in me, because sustained stress and sustained things going wrong and sustained poor treatment, these things can chemically and physically alter your brain. So it's okay to chemically alter your brain again to try and repair that. It's okay to alter your habits and it's okay to alter your thinking, because the situations you have been in all the time as a human being are doing that to you anyway. So it's all right if you want to do something against that. But yes, the practical things I did were I absolutely reached out and found therapists and talked to them about what I was experiencing. And I looked, my therapist searching experience in this case was a lot like OkCupid. I looked through lots of therapist profiles until basically I looked at one where I was like, that person just looks like they might get me. Because there are a lot of different options, and they had a sliding scale, and I had to be like, I don't have loads of money. I can afford to pay you like this amount. And they were like, that's fine. Tell me how much money you're earning, and like if you can tell me about your circumstances and your income and show me something, we'll work at something out. And they were good about that. And I was like, yep, I'm happy to be honest about money. Here it is. And they're like, all right, I'm going to charge you this much, and we'll do it this often. I was like, okay. And also that involved doing a lot of stuff between sessions. Those therapy sessions were like, we talk about stuff, and then my therapist is like, okay, go away and do this. Go away and read this. Here's a thing to look at. Here's a thing to look into. And so it was both therapy and it was kind of like education. And then next week I'd be like, okay, I did the thing you asked me to do. I learned this, or I tried this, or this didn't work, or this didn't go well, or this did go well. And then we talk about that. And all of my experience of therapy has very much been like, it's not an hour in a room with a person. It's also, what are you going to do in the meantime? It's like, how are you going to challenge yourself perhaps, or how are you going to examine something you've done, or how are you going to examine something else someone else has done? All of these sort of things. So there's a lot more than just talking to a person. So that was how I did that. And it was absolutely worth searching for a while until somebody felt right. It's one of the hardest parts of it because it takes time and you don't know how it's going to go until you do it. But the solution is you've got to give it a go and see what happens. That's how I did that side of the thing. And the GP side of the thing was I had to just be very honest with my GP and say, hey, all these things happened in my life in the period of a few years, and I've been feeling this way. Is there something you recommend? And he was like, yeah, you should have these things because lots of people have these things when this stuff happens in their life because it's hard. And that was great. And that also felt really validating. It's very strange. And there's one other story around this I'm going to talk about. And it's just come into my head and it's weirdly unrelated, but it felt very good talking to a therapist about these things again was very validating, because there was a lot of stuff that felt like it was wrong and unfair and not the way that it should be. And my therapist was like, yeah, some of these things are, yes, it's right for you to feel these way about these things. These things don't add up. These things are wrong in some way, or they're unfair, or like, you know, we should talk about these things and go through them. And it was a bit like that with my GP, where it's like, yeah, these things are, you know, absolutely tough, and you need to talk about this stuff and find ways to process it and handle it and get help from medication, whatever. There was a thing it was about last Christmas time, and I was going to the store to buy groceries, and I went through a car park, or as we would say here in Canada, a parking lot, and there was a squirrel on the ground, and it was one of those sad things where I looked at it and I was like, a squirrel's been hit by a car, that's really sad. And I looked at it and I was just like, that's really, what an unfortunate thing. And I looked at it, walked past it, looked at it again, and it moved. And as soon as it moved, I was like, I can't go to the shop, I have to see what's happening with the squirrel. And then I realized that it was breathing and it was alive, and it was in sort of some kind of distress. So I ended up calling the BC SPCA people, and the whole time this was happening, I was like, this is ridiculous, no one's going to take me seriously, because this is just a squirrel, and who cares that it's like right in the middle of a parking lot where it could be hit by someone else, or like a cat could attack it, or like, I don't know what's going on. But it was clearly like alive, and it was trying to move, and it was trying to get away. And I called the BC. The whole time that this happened, I was like, I'm being over dramatic. What I feel doesn't matter. This is silly. I should move on. It's just a squirrel on the ground. And I was expecting, like, at any point, the people I called to be like, yeah, you know, we can't, isn't that sad? It's a squirrel on the ground. It's injured, whatever. And as soon as the person sort of spoke to me and I said, hey, I'm here, I'm in this place, and I'm with this injured animal, they were like, okay, where are you? We'll send someone out right now. And the moment that happened, I got really upset. And I got really upset partly because there was like an injured animal in front of me. But I also got partly upset because I was like, wow, this person is taking me and what I feel seriously. And that was a really weird, really hard moment for me that was connected to some other stuff in my life. And they came out in a van, and the person was like, yep, they might have been hit by a car, or they might have been injured. And what these squirrels do is they run around for a bit, and then the injury catches up with them, and they sort of fall down. Like the immediate injury, like it possibly wasn't hit by a car here. So we have to take it away and, like, you know, take care of it overnight and all of this sort of stuff. Thanks for calling us out. Like, we'll take it from here. And they put the squirrel in a cage, and it was clearly like it was alive. It knew what was going on. And it could have been permanently paralyzed. It could have been temporarily paralyzed. There could have been something else going on. My concern was I thought it had been poisoned and it was having seizures or reactions. And if it's been poisoned by something, then like other animals are going to eat that and also be hurt. And they were like, no, it's possibly got an injury of some kind, and we have to look after it because it could possibly recover. So thanks for letting us know. This is what we do. And they took it away. And they took everything seriously, and it was just a thing where I was like, I'm not being unreasonable or over dramatic about a thing, and that was a very big deal for me. So that's I don't know, that's a really big, tall tale. Thank you for listening to all of that, everybody who is here hanging out with me right now, expecting me to GeoGuess. I'm going to catch up with what everyone says. I appreciate your patience. I appreciate your listening. I appreciate that's a lot. That went nothing like how I imagined explaining it would. Didn't prepare for that. I just know I wanted to talk about it in some way. Thank you, the silent Q. Anxiety is something I struggle with a lot. Having someone to talk to makes a difference, plus medication if needed. I'm glad that you're talking to someone about it. Anxiety is a weird thing as well, where I think like there can be a whole spectrum of it, where we can all get an amount of it sometimes as well, and sometimes you have like I've probably had it in the past, but I've been able to deal with it. It's when it's too much. It's like, I'm trying to think of I don't know, comparison. Like there are physical injuries we have and we deal with them and it's fine. And then they become too serious and we have to see someone else. And I think it's the same with anxiety. It could be with depression. I've probably had depression sometimes in my life, maybe, but probably not to the extent where some people I know have been really affected by it. I might have had it, but I've been able to deal with it or work around it. And I've never thought about handling it the way other people have. Some of the anxiety symptoms I have now, like I may have had them before and I might have thought they were mild depression and they're actually anxiety. I think there's absolutely a spectrum going on there. Mortified penguins. My doctor asked me if I wanted to up my dosage and I was like, I don't know. We did that with me. I started at 5 and then I went to 10 and now I'm on 15 milligrams. The maximum is 20. And I don't know if I want to max out because I think I would have more digestive issues. But I tell you what, I would rather have the digestive issues than the mental health issues, because the digestive issues, if I feel unwell and I have to like, it's not like we have a lot of plans right now to cancel, but it's like, it's not a bad day when I don't think it's a bad day when I have to read a book or watch a film or like curl up with some cramps and play a video game. Like, that's not so bad. Of all the things that are happening in the world right now, I can still talk to my friends, I can still play a video game, I can still do a whole bunch of different things. I just probably shouldn't be, you know, leaping gaily down the road because that would go bad for everybody. But you know, there's no comparison. It's like I would rather be unwell and like, you know, sorry, maybe I can't play anything on Board Game Arena right now. But you know, it passes. It always passes, and I always manage to handle it. Doesn't it? Mortified also said, doesn't it mess with most SSRIs? If you mean the pantoprazole I'm on, then yes, which is why I'm specifically on escitalopram, because that doesn't. These two don't conflict, and it's super important that I be on the digestive thing, because otherwise my stomach will just eat itself. That was one of the stress things. One of the first conversations I had with my doctor when they were like, you have this bug inside you and it's probably giving you ulcers and we have to send a camera down your throat and all that. One of the first conversations I had with him was like, we have to do this because we don't know how long you've had it and it causes cancer. And I was like, oh, great. And you have to say that as a doctor. Like, it's exactly the right thing for him to say, is to be frank and honest. But I've never had like just a conversation like that on the phone with someone where it's like, we have to look at what's going on. The chances are low, but we look and then that's how we know if you don't. It's a bit of stress around that. Tema, thank you. Sears Rain, thank you. Zen says, are you finding you get nausea more often than normal? No, I'm not getting nausea. I'm having focus problems. I'm having problems working. Writing 1,000 words for standard Paul is usually like walk in the park. It's like just bam, get those. Maybe they're not very good, but I can edit them. The problem I have now is writing 1,000 words for standard Paul is I'm exhausted. It's like I've gone for a run. You know, it's like I'm just done. Like I want to go to sleep. That's what's weird. I've never been tired out so much by writing. Maybe if I write all day. Standard Paul was like, da-da-da, written all day. I've written 5,000 words. It's garbage. Because that's what happens when you write 5,000 words in a day. You have to edit them and change them or whatever. But now it's like, boom, boom, boom. And if you're writing a longer piece of work, it's like, I can't remember what I've said in the earlier piece of work. That's what's hard for me. Nausea, no. Gut stuff, yes. Like cramps and indigestion, but nausea, no.